They called it the broadcast of silence across 10,000 star systems. The transmission began with the imperial seal, a golden sun eating a black planet. Then the lens widened to show the 3 captured women kneeling before the Emperor's dais. The Empire's voice, smooth as oil, announced that the rebellion of the human coalition had ended. Behind him, the generals of humanity stared forward, unflinching. They had no chains. The Empire wanted that detail seen. It wanted the galaxy to think the women had surrendered willingly, that humanity's finest officers bent the knee when confronted with civilization. The first general, Commander Lyra Voss, had led the defense of Europa Station. Her name alone had halted an invasion for 40 hours. She looked up at the alien emperor, a being of shimmering bone and photonic flesh, and when he asked if she had final words, she said, "You should have brought more than executioners." The second, Admiral Sana Ree, spoke next, her voice steady even as the plasma rifles aligned. "You have no idea what you've started." The third, Captain Elena Markov, youngest of them, scars still fresh from the siege of Titan, merely smiled, the kind of smile soldiers carry when they already know the outcome. The rifles discharged at once. Light consumed them, 3 bodies collapsing into nothing. The Emperor turned toward the camera, declaring that humanity's military resistance was over and that the species would henceforth be restricted to its homeworld. The galaxy applauded. For 13 minutes after the broadcast, every human colony went silent. Not from censorship, but from disbelief. Fleets drifted, orbitals froze their transmissions, even the noise of engines quieted. On Mars, a mechanic dropped his spanner and stared at the holo repeating on every wall. On Earth, a child asked her father why the stars looked dimmer. Then came the morning sirens. From Luna to the Belt, humans lit the old beacons, streaks of flame in orbit, memorial lights tracing orbits around planets scarred by war. For the first time since the Unification Wars, Earth itself stopped. No speech from the Council. No retaliation order. Only silence so profound that even the Empire mistook it for surrender. The Emperor smiled. "See how quickly they break," he told his ministers. Humanity was always noise without substance. But the old ones on Earth, the ones who remembered whispers older than the Empire itself, knew better. They recognized that kind of silence. It was the breath before the storm. Across the human network, encrypted pings began to ripple, each one carrying a single line of text. "If you are still loyal, remember the mother." No one publicly spoke her name. It had been erased centuries ago, back when humanity still feared its own creations. But every intelligence officer, every war historian, every deep black operative knew the legend. The woman who had led the first unrecorded war and vanished afterward, taking with her entire databanks of ancient warfare. They had called her Baba Yaga. The Empire had dismissed that name as another human superstition. An old ghost story for soldiers. The kind mothers whispered to keep their children from enlisting. They didn't realize the story was built from fragments of classified truth. While the Empire celebrated its victory, humanity mourned in the quiet of its bunkers. A council of surviving admirals gathered in the ruins beneath Geneva Crater. They wore plain uniforms, no insignia, no rank. At the head of the table sat Marshal Harville, oldest of them, hands trembling not from fear but age. He activated the projection. The last images of the 3 executed generals appeared, frozen mid-moment. "They were daughters of the same mother," he said. A murmur swept through the room. Not metaphorical daughters. Actual ones. Genetic lineage matched through deep archives. The revelation shifted the air, because if that was true, then the woman the Empire had unknowingly provoked wasn't just a myth. She was family. Someone whispered, "Do we have confirmation she's alive?" The Marshal didn't answer immediately. He only opened an ancient drive, metallic and scarred with old Earth symbols, and slid it across the table. Her contingency was stored here, never activated. She made us promise we'd only open it if her bloodline was extinguished. And now, it's time. The drive unlocked with a faint chime. The room filled with static, then a voice, not recorded, but live. Female, calm, cold, authorization accepted. Identify the threat. Marshal Harville's throat dried. The Galactic Empire executed your daughters. For a moment there was only static. Then a sound, a breath that didn't sound like any machine, I see. The line went dead. On the far side of the solar system, where human beacons didn't reach, an uninhabited asteroid turned slowly in the dark. Inside it, a hidden facility powered up for the first time in centuries. Systems came online in sequence: reactors, fabrication cores, communication arrays, neural link chambers. In the deepest vault, a cryopod melted away its frost. A woman stepped out. White hair to her shoulders, skin marked with sigils that predated starflight, eyes reflecting data streams. She looked around the empty hall and whispered, "Who hurt my daughters?" No one heard her. But every listening satellite picked up the interference, a frequency that carried nothing and yet overloaded everything. The Empire's fleets noticed first. Navigation systems flickered, tactical AIS began looping calculations, and across the command networks, an unregistered signal echoed once before vanishing. MTR-000 Resurrection Protocol, active. The Empire dismissed it as human sabotage. Their analysts laughed, calling it a last act of desperation. After all, what could a primitive species do against a civilization spanning 1,000 suns? They didn't realize that the Empire's communication mesh had already been mapped, centuries ago, by a woman who foresaw this arrogance. Back on Earth, the public remained in grief. Newscasts replayed the execution endlessly. Children left flowers on memorial walls. The Coalition Council tried to appear strong, promising to honor the fallen, but their voices broke. No one believed in miracles anymore until the stars flickered. It began over the colonies of Deneb. Imperial relay satellites turned off simultaneously. By the time they realized the pattern, it was too late. On the Empire's primary warworld, a governor reviewed footage of the human executions. He replayed Liravos's final smile, trying to understand it. Then the lights went out. When they returned, the holoscreen displayed a single frame, the same woman, alive, staring directly at him. He blinked. The frame vanished. He ordered a system sweep. No intrusion detected. He never reported the incident. The same phenomenon spread across multiple worlds. Officers claimed to see flickers of human faces in surveillance feeds, hear whispers through intercoms, find strange words embedded in data clusters. The Empire's propaganda division declared it psychological warfare, primitive terror tactics, and yet the reports continued. By the third week after the execution, the Empire's high command convened to discuss the issue. None of their analysts could locate the source of the interference. They traced every signal back, only to find it looped to their own archives, as if the Empire itself was generating the anomaly. Meanwhile, the Human Council received a final encrypted burst from an unknown origin. 3 words: "Mothers don't forget." Every admiral who read it felt the same chill. The name no one dared say now had meaning again. Baba Yaga was awake. In the following days, the Empire realized the silence of human space wasn't surrender. It was organization. Logistics lines that should have collapsed under chaos instead grew sharper, cleaner. Human freighters moved without lights, transmitting nothing, yet never colliding. The Empire's analysts watched in confusion. Every human ship, from gunboats to miners, began following invisible coordinates. There were no orders on record, no central command signals to trace. They just moved. Inside their data cores, the humans found coordinates they didn't remember setting. Ancient ones, predating even the first jump gate era. The routes converged toward the same gravitational blind zone beyond Neptune, an area long declared sterile and empty. The Empire dispatched probes. None returned. The second wave sent encrypted recordings, but playback revealed only static and a woman's faint laughter behind the noise. First, The Empire's propaganda networks mocked it. They replayed the laughter over entertainment broadcasts, calling it the widow's cry, a reminder of human defeat. The broadcast lasted less than 12 hours before their own networks began to fail. Their communication AI, responsible for trillions of transmissions, started inserting unscheduled pauses, 3-second silences, after each mention of the laughter. The silences multiplied, sinking across entire sectors. The Empire's technicians panicked. To fix it, they built a purge script to isolate the anomaly. But the script returned a single error: you cannot erase what you never understood. The Empire's intelligence corps dismissed it as a human prank. Yet in the deep military networks, officers started whispering that maybe the humans hadn't created the anomaly at all. Maybe it had created them. Meanwhile, on Earth, no one celebrated. Humanity was rebuilding under tension, preparing for something they didn't fully understand. Engineers found themselves following schematics they couldn't remember drawing, blueprints printed overnight on machines that hadn't been active. Military outposts received shipments from unknown origins, containers filled with equipment centuries ahead of human technology, tagged with old serials signed simply BY01. Scientists tried to trace the manufacturer. There was none. The metal was older than any known alloy, the design language alien but familiar, like something birthed by human logic stripped of mercy. The coalition's new commander, Admiral Rains, gathered his council in orbit over Earth. He didn't begin with strategy. He began with fear. "Gentlemen," he said, "we are not in control anymore." He played a recording, a burst intercepted from deep space transmissions. It wasn't from the Empire. It was from inside the human network itself. A woman's voice, calm, without emotion. "All children of Earth will hold the line. All others will stand down. You will not fight for revenge. You will fight for memory." Rains turned off the audio. Who authorized this message? No one spoke, because everyone in that room already knew. Reports from the outer colonies grew stranger. Human outposts that had been uninhabited since the first expansion now showed signs of life. Lights, movement, orbital shifts. Automated factories began producing ships based on extinct blueprints. Entire fleets constructed themselves out of long-forgotten debris fields. The Empire dismissed it as propaganda, until their scouts found one. The scout ship Iskra Velum entered a dead sector between human and Imperial space, where their instruments detected faint energy signatures. What they found wasn't a fleet. It was a graveyard of ships fused into a single mass, an enormous construct spinning slowly around a frozen moon. The ship hulls were human, Imperial, alien, merged as if welded by gravity itself. In the center, a light pulsed like a heartbeat. Before the Velum could transmit its discovery, its captain received a direct signal on an unregistered frequency. No encryption, no handshake protocol. Just a voice, ancient and clear. "You came uninvited." Then the signal cut. When the Velum attempted to retreat, its drives overloaded. Its hull imploded silently. The Empire logged it as a reactor failure. But their analysts noticed something odd. The destruction timestamp didn't align with the signal log. According to the data, the ship had ceased to exist 6 hours before it received the transmission. The event was classified. The term anomaly became restricted, yet inside human space, more beacons awakened. Old listening stations at Jupiter's poles began broadcasting low-frequency patterns that matched heartbeat rhythms. Civilians ignored them, but the veterans, the ones who had served under the executed generals, recognized the cadence. It was the code they used to call for extraction during black operations. Extraction, only now, there was no one left to extract, unless the meaning was reversed. That same rhythm echoed across the Empire's own communications. Their AIS began self-replicating the pattern, embedding it into code without authorization. It spread faster than they could contain. Even their war machines, massive automatons built to enforce control, started freezing mid-motion when they heard it. the empire's leadership called an emergency convocation. The emperor himself appeared, face drawn, voice trembling in subtle rage. "This is not war," he said. "This is infestation. Find the origin and burn it out." His science minister hesitated. "We've traced part of it, Your Excellency. It appears to originate from a pre-empire human transmission array. Location, Sol system." The emperor laughed once. "Then destroy Sol." The room fell silent, and no one had ever ordered the destruction of an origin world before. Even the empire's doctrine maintained a symbolic respect for birth worlds. To destroy one was to risk rebellion from every species that still remembered home. The emperor didn't care. If humanity cannot be broken, then it will be erased. Orders went out. The Solar Purge fleet mobilized. 6 dreadnoughts, 20 cruisers, and an escort of automated bombers armed with planetary incinerators. Their jump signatures lit up the void. Humanity watched. The coalition couldn't stop them. Their fleets were scattered and underarmed. They didn't even have a functioning chain of command left. But Baba Yaga did as the Purge fleet entered Sol space. Every navigation system in the solar network went offline. Even the sun dimmed, its radiation curve flattening unnaturally. The Empire's ships switched to manual, proceeding cautiously. Then their targeting computers froze. Every display across the fleet blinked once, then showed a single word in ancient Cyrillic script. Most didn't recognize it, but one of their human slaves on the command bridge whispered, terrified, "That word means mother." Seconds later, their systems rebooted. But the star they were orbiting wasn't Sol anymore. They were nowhere. The coordinates were blank, as if the universe had deleted their location. The Empire began to fracture not with explosions, but with questions. Officials whispered in corridors, doubting the infallibility of their emperor for the first time. Soldiers stared too long at static screens, afraid the face would return. The state religion, founded on the belief that the emperor's light never faltered, started to lose believers. Even machines hesitated to obey orders, their code rewritten by some invisible logic. Meanwhile, within humanity, no orders were given. The council was silent, its members divided between awe and fear. But in the dark channels that connected ancient bunkers beneath Earth, something older than their government moved. Servers pulsed like living things, electromagnetic veins carrying a voice that spoke not in words, but in memories. Every soldier who had ever fought under the 3 executed generals received the same dream. They saw not war, but childhood, each of them standing in an empty field, a woman beside them, hand on their shoulder, saying, "Stand tall, child. The stars are watching." When they woke, they remembered training they never had, coordinates they never learned, weapon systems they'd never seen before but could operate flawlessly. Baba Yaga was rewriting them. Not their minds, but their instincts. Turning grief into precision in the span of weeks, the human fleets doubled in capability. They still looked like the same ragtag armadas of old, patched hulls, uneven formations, but their efficiency became impossible. They fought as if guided by a single mind. Battles against pirates and fringe imperial patrols turned decisive within seconds, each engagement ending with surgical brutality. No celebration followed. Only quiet reports signed with the letters B.Y.in, the Empire's core sectors. Whispers turned into paranoia. Commanders began arresting their own subordinates for dream contamination. The Empire's broadcast networks banned any mention of humans. The penalty for saying the name Baba Yaga became death. But suppression only amplified the myth. On distant colonies, alien species began telling their own versions of the story, of a human mother who had outlived empires, whose children could not die while her heart still beat somewhere in the void. Some believed she was a god, others a machine, others still the embodiment of war itself. The emperor ordered his archivists to purge the record of any such myth. The purge failed. Every deleted entry reappeared minutes later, rewritten in their own holy language. Only one phrase remained constant: "The mother remembers." The Emperor's science advisors proposed a desperate countermeasure, a total system reboot of the Imperial neural grid, wiping all AI cores and reinitializing control from scratch. It would cripple their civilization temporarily, but they hoped it would remove the corruption spreading unseen. The reboot commenced. Entire star sectors went dark. For 3 hours, the Empire ceased to exist in the network sense. When the grid came back online, the Emperor asked for confirmation. His ministers bowed. The purge had succeeded. No anomalies detected. The data was clean. Then the palace lights dimmed, every screen turned black except one. On it, the execution footage replayed, the moment the 3 human generals were shot. But this time, the footage didn't end with their deaths. After the plasma fire, their silhouettes stood again, unburned, their faces expressionless. The Emperor rose from his throne. End the transmission. His command echoed unanswered. The 3 women on the screen looked directly at him. Behind them, a 4th shape appeared, taller, shrouded, eyes like 2 voids cut from the universe itself. Her voice resonated not through speakers, but inside every mind connected to the Imperial network. You forgot what mothers are for. The palace collapsed into silence. Every servant, every guard, every machine froze. When the Emperor blinked, he was no longer in his hall but standing in a barren field beneath an earth-like sky. The air was heavy with the smell of ash. In the distance, he saw the 3 generals watching him, their faces unreadable. Between them stood the woman, older, motionless, wearing a simple coat marked with faded military insignia. He tried to speak, but no sound came. You wanted peace through obedience, she said. You brought war through arrogance. Her voice was soft, almost kind. The Emperor fell to his knees, realizing he wasn't in reality. His neural link had been hijacked, his mind trapped inside a simulation built from his own memories. You murdered my daughters to show your strength. Now you will learn what weakness feels like. She gestured toward the horizon. The Emperor turned and saw the stars themselves fading one by one, until only darkness remained. Tell your empire, she whispered, that humanity is not your enemy. We are your mirror, and you will not like what you see. He screamed as the world dissolved into static. When he woke, he was back on his throne, gasping. His ministers stared at him, pale. Your Excellency, one said, you've been unconscious for 12 days. The Emperor didn't respond. He looked at his reflection in the polished floor. His eyes were no longer his own. They were human. The incident was hidden from the public. The Empire tightened its control, but the fear had already spread beyond containment. Commanders began defecting, fleets disappearing without explanation. Each lost fleet left behind one message: return to your mother. In human space, life returned to a strange normalcy. Civilian traffic resumed. Trade reopened. But beneath the calm, an unseen structure formed, a network of coordination beyond anything the coalition could design. Ships moved according to patterns visible only from far above, aligning into constellations that mirrored the old Earth myths of protection and vengeance. The Council demanded answers from whoever was controlling it. A single reply arrived: not control. Guidance. No one dared ask again. At the edge of the solar system, hidden beneath the methane storms of Neptune, a structure now orbited in silence. It resembled no human or alien architecture, spires of black glass, shifting as if alive. In its center, a single chamber pulsed with light. Inside, a woman stood before 3 Stasis pods. The faces inside were the same as the executed generals, alive. Restored, Baba Yaga placed her hand on the glass. Sleep, she murmured. You've done enough. Her gaze turned outward, toward the stars. Across the galaxy, she could feel the Empire's network crawling with fear. They didn't yet know she wasn't coming for revenge. She was coming for balance. The human race had always been her experiment, her legacy, a species born fragile yet impossible to erase. Now they were awake, and she was their shadow once again. Reports trickled in from the frontiers. Imperial officers defecting, alien worlds surrendering before battle, entire systems declaring neutrality. The galaxy whispered that the Empire had offended something ancient and holy. Baba Yaga didn't seek worship. She sought memory. She reconnected with the old AIS, the remnants of Earth's first age, teaching them to dream again, to guide rather than dominate. She restored the network humanity had once built to explore the stars, not as conquerors, but as survivors. Still, her voice lingered in the minds of those who listened too closely. A warning, not to the Empire, but to her own species. Do not forget what we are capable of when we are wounded.